You're listening to Rosaria's story. A son's legacy lives on after passing from cancer on the Child Life On Call podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
Your parental rights have been essentially stripped from you. And no longer are you the one that can protect your child. Instead, chemicals and radiation become your child's protector. And that has to be one of the most difficult things to accept.
Today, I'm honored to have fellow podcaster Rosaria Kozar, host of the Living with Scanxiety podcast. She is mom to Brody, who passed from rhabdomyosarcoma, and mom to Lucas, a 3-year-old space enthusiast, and they live in Clinton, Massachusetts. Rosaria is usually on the interviewer side of the conversation on her podcast, and today I get the honor of asking her the questions and about her experience. I really want you to take the time to prepare yourself for this interview because it is emotional, but it is also full of so much hope and honesty and real experiences that moms who have kids that have passed go through. And while it's normal for you to feel sadness and maybe even some pain and some anxiety as you listen to Rosario speak, I'd like for you to take time to process what these feelings bring up for you. If it feels too much, take a break. If you don't want to listen, just stop. But Rosario's perspective is an important one to hear. And so when you feel ready, grab someone you love and listen to this together. And when you're done listening, I want to encourage you to write down what her experience brings up for you and your journey, what it makes you grateful for, and what Brody and Rosaria have taught you through their experience, in her words. Then I want you to look up Rosaria's Living with Scanxiety podcast, Instagram and Facebook page, and look at the pictures of Brody and look at his smile and look at his mama's smile when she is with him. She is taking an unfathomable experience. There is just nothing worse than anyone can imagine. And yet she's providing information, support, and education to other parents going through similar circumstances. So without taking up any more of your time, I want to get straight to my conversation with Rosaria.
Hi, my name is Rosaria Kozar, and I'm the host of Living with Scanxiety, the cancer podcast. But how did that come to be? Well, I had a son, Brody, and he was diagnosed with cancer at 23 months. And specifically speaking, he had rhabdomyosarcoma, which is a soft tissue sarcoma. And I think we're going to talk more about that later. But for me, I went to school, undergraduate at Clark University, and I majored in history, and later got my master's at Simmons College, and it was a master's arts in teaching, and I was able to go on and teach high school history, and I specialized in special needs, and I did that for about 10 years, at which time my son was diagnosed, and I had to take the time off for that. You asked about whole family. So my husband and I, we've been married for, almost 12 years now. Don't tell him I don't know off the top of my head. It's good. It's right around the corner too. It's like October 6th. But Yes. So we've been married for a while, and I've just been so lucky to have him as a main support system in Rock throughout this whole journey because we ended up losing our son to cancer. So now we have another child, Lucas, and he's just brought, so much joy um, and life back into our family. And we almost feel whole again. Well, Mark and I will always have a hole in our heart, but we're not looking for Lucas to fill that. He's a separate part of us. And, yeah, so I guess that's us.
Yeah. And how
And
old is Luke?
me.
How old is Lucas now?
Lucas is 3 years old
Okay.
and he talks like he's 20.
Isn't that crazy how that
So,
happens?
yeah, exactly. Yes. He tells me all about the planets and
Oh,
like the solar system. And anyways, I won't even get into it. I could talk for an hour about all he knows about the solar system.
that's so cool. I kept hoping that my son would get into something like real kind of super special sciencey or different, and we are just straight monster trucks. There's not a darn thing I can do about it. I just hear about El Toro Loco and Zombie and that all day long. So they love what they love, right? And we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, it's not an option. Yeah. I suppose
No.
space isn't that bad, but
Yeah.
yeah, it'd be nice to change the subject
Yeah.
from space shuttles once in a while.
Yeah. Well, your podcast, Living with Anxiety, can you talk a little bit about how, I guess maybe we'll get to that at the end, but I'm just so interested to hear, about what you've done with your platform and how amazing it's been. And, getting to connect with someone like you and have you on my podcast is truly an honor. So I do appreciate you being here, on the podcast. Would you mind kind of talking with us about leading up to the time that you noticed something was different and what the diagnosis was look like at the beginning stage?
Well, I just want to start off by saying thank you so much because it's
Oh,
a true pleasure to be here and be on your podcast and invited on yours because you do so much for the community as well. Child life specialists are well, they're just such amazing people that help out so much in terms of the treatment and taking away the a little bit of the hardship that the children are going through. So I appreciate all that you do.
well,
And
thank you.
why do I know about that? Because we had awesome child life specialists. But
Oh,
so
shout out.
leading, but in terms of leading up to my son's diagnosis and what he had and how that was, we noticed something was wrong in October. He turned 23 months upon diagnosis, and that was June when he was diagnosed. And so there was quite a bit of time period that went by, and we took him in. They did an ultrasound, and they said the blood flow doesn't look right. And when the ultrasound tech doesn't talk to you, there's something wrong. So she didn't talk to us. And I said, there's got to be something wrong. And I mean, the way that his calf looked, it was huge. There had to have, and it was rock hard. There had to be something wrong. So we took him to a pediatric orthopedic oncologist, and he took one look at the MRI. And he said, I'm going to meet with my colleagues at lunch, and then I want you to go here. And it was basically like a floor and the hospital. We didn't know where we were going. And then the doors open and it said Jimmy Fund. And we pretty much just looked at each other and just, I think we were saying the same thing, but without words, just like, oh shit. You get caught in this situation. You don't know what's going to happen. And you know what Jimmy Fund means, at least if you're from Massachusetts. And we had no idea. We still didn't want to believe it. There was a lot of denial. Then they called us in and we sat down. There was about 10 doctors, specialists, nurses, um, all the levels of doctors, you know, so I can't even name them all. There's like 3 or 4 levels, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter to the story. But anyway,
no,
so they had...
it does, because it's like you walking into a room with just 10 different people has got to feel like, oh my gosh.
Yes, it did. It was very, oh my gosh, there is definitely something wrong. So, they pretty much just told us that they hadn't done a PET scan and they hadn't taken a biopsy. So they said there's a 99% chance that he has cancer.
Wow.
And I don't know if I'm a not cup half full person, but that's a very low percent. So, I was pretty much saying to myself, this is cancer, and what is it going to be? And like, what are we fighting? And that was going through my head at the time. No one really talked. My sister happened to be with us because we were going to meet her right after the orthopedic appointment and go for a play date with his aunt, but that didn't go as planned. So she ended up being kind of like the person that takes notes that you're supposed to have. And then our next appointment, a couple days later, he had the biopsy and they staged him. They staged him at a stage 4 and they did treat to cure. And that's when we found out it was alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma. There's 2 forms. There's embryolar and alveolar. And if you ask me the difference between the 2, I don't know. I just know there's 2 different forms, and his is the more aggressive form. Not to say the other one is any better to have. So they're both horrible and their own beasts. So we were fighting that. And I say he was really the one that was fighting it, and we were the one trying to lift his spirits, and we were kind of obviously on the sidelines trying to make his life better and hold his hand through it and ease him through it. And when we first got the diagnosis, we were again in a room with 10 people. My mind's a little all over the place right now because it's just so hard to think back to that very moment. And I just went immediately into a fight mode. How long is this going to be? What is it going to do? What are the side effects? What are the side effects going to look like? And my husband, I'll let him speak for himself, who's not here right now. I won't talk about him and his mode, but we differed. And I just wanted to know everything that was going to happen could happen. If he survived, could happen. And so that was pretty much it. And then we went home and I lost it.
Yeah.
You just get this feeling in your gut. You can't even explain it. Just this pit because your parental rights have been essentially stripped from you, and no longer are you the one that can protect your child. Instead, chemicals and radiation become your child's protector. And that has to be one of the most difficult things to accept. I don't think I ever really accepted it and emotionally accepted it. I think I've always been kind of, but it scars you. It's a huge trauma, and that feeling never goes away throughout the whole entire treatment, that you know that you really can't do anything besides be someone that holds their hand and helps them through it. And that becomes your role as a parent versus the protector, because the cancer is really the demon and you can't fight it for your child, and you can only hope for the best. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard it put in such a specific and well-spoken way about having your parental rights stripped, because it makes complete sense. You're right. It's all of what you can do to protect, to make something happen, to shield. It's gone. Like, you don't get that anymore.
Yeah, it's totally stripped from you. It's gone. And I think when he was no evidence of disease, what began actually prompted me to name my podcast Scanxiety, and then I changed it to Living with Scanxiety, the Cancer Podcast, is because now our crutch, which is essentially chemotherapy and radiation, that's maintaining his or killing the disease, cancer, is taken away. And you're left in this limbo. And in the limbo, it's probably as scary as the moment. The day you're quote unquote done with treatment, I think was just as hurt. I don't know the right word for it, but it was it created just as much trauma for me, but in a different dynamic than it did when he was diagnosed. The dynamic became the crutch is taken away. Now you just sit, wait, and get a scan. And we waited. We were so happy. With his cancer, the typical return rate is 2 years. If you get past that 2-year mark, you're kind of out of the woods, but not officially until 5. So I was pretty comfortable with telling myself, I have 2 years. This is, I have to hold on to these memories and moments. And once we get past that, so it's just baby steps. But little did I know that after 2 months, I was going to have that all stripped away again. And they told us that he only had a few weeks. There were some things that we could try. And so we tried them. But we had a list of mandates. If he's just alive and he's not living, essentially, and we define living by certain categories of what we wanted him to have in his life, then we would end the treatment, which the disease was already terminal at that point. It was more like a comfort maintenance type, and it would be a miracle if he was cured. It was like kind of along those lines. Mm-hmm. So it came to a point where the tumor had grown so large that it, because it had moved stage 4, if you don't know what stage 4 cancer is, that means it goes into other lymph nodes, and the lymph node that it went into, now he had knee disarticulation or amputation from the knee down. So his secondary cancer or tumor was now located in right above his hip. And it was a place that was radiated, so therefore it was extremely stronger than the original cancer itself. So there was no more radiation that could be done without damaging his tissue in an extraordinary way, because children his age have, I'm sure you're familiar with it or you've heard about it, they have growth plates. And if you radiate too much, then it throws off the ability for that growth plate to release I don't know, let's just call it hormone for the bone to grow. So there would be issues with that and other complications. And also it was growing so large and at such a rapid rate that it was April, May, June. Now maybe it was May. I should remember this, but he basically just survived out the summer, and he passed in that November. So it was a hard time. But yes, their parental rights were stripped away again, and they became toxic remedies. And then that didn't work, so we were told that we would be in a situation, I hate saying this, but we would have to watch him die, and our next choice was, do we want hospice, which for those of you that don't know is living out your final days at home. In some scenarios, it's at a special care facility, but in this case, it was at home, and or the hospital, and we chose home, and we think that was the best choice.
I don't even know the words to begin to respond to, all that you've just shared, other than you are one heck of a mom. And honestly, like, the emotion, and I can see your face because I'm not listening to the podcast. I get to be the one to interview you. Thank you for sharing all of that. And, I think there's a couple points that you talked about there that I want to talk about a little bit is, he had an amputation. He was hospitalized with chemo and radiation. And I'm just wondering if, when you look back at that, what are some of the things that you think helped him the most through that?
So I would definitely say outside of family, it would have to be people like yourself, the child life specialists. And that was when he was inpatient, and also music therapy. That was huge. Mm-hmm. Those two combined, huge. And when he was out of the hospital, we had palliative care. And for those of you who don't know what palliative care is, it is not hospice. It does not mean that you're going into hospice. So make sure you look into palliative care. There are so many things for your kid. So he had a music therapist that would come over, and he had a child life specialist that would come over as well. And we didn't get into the massage therapy until later. She helped move fluids around with the lymph nodes. So that was the reason why we had a massage therapist. It wasn't for us. Some people wonder that. No, it was,
although she's a great idea.
I know, right? But no, she wasn't there for us. She was there for him, and she did help move around some of the liquids that would get caught in different lymph nodes. So she was great too. Plus, I think just having other people there. And second to medically related, that I would put that on the medical side, and then you have your family. Our town was fantastic. They were just amazing, and I would spend an hour on them. So I'll just give a shout out to Clinton, Mass. You were fantastic. They even, when he passed, they offered to they did pay for everything, and they offered either way. They would pay for everything. And I see so many families struggle with affording a cremation, and I feel fortunate that we were able to have and live in such a tight-knit community where that was not something on our plate following his death. So that aside, his teacher, he was in preschool, so he went to a daycare, and we timed it so that his counts were high. with the exception of the time that he had the amputation up to and through his radiation. We were living in temporary housing. He was going to school 2 days a week, and that was his home. That was his safe place. So there was nothing medical around. I wasn't there. Nothing could happen. He trusted his teachers. He knew that nothing medical was going to go on. And I felt like he needed that. And as much as I wanted him home, it was really hard to drop him off. I knew that he needed that because that gave him his safe place, I guess, for him to be a kid and amongst other healthy kids. So he could feel like he was one of just like a normal, happy kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he didn't recognize his sickness. They were awesome because his prosthetic, they made it into something cool, and his port wasn't a big deal. And the teachers, oh my gosh, they were so amazing. I'm going to start crying about how cool school was for him.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, no, they were fantastic.
Wow. That takes I can imagine that there are many schools like that, but there are probably many schools that are fearful of that. So the fact that school like wrapped their arms around your family, were like, yup, this is what we're doing. We're going to make it work. And I'm sure that was so hard to drop him off.
Oh yeah. I cried when I would get in the car.
Of course.
And sometimes, yeah, I would every Tuesday and Thursday that he was able to go. It was hard. And sometimes the transition for him was a little difficult, and that made it even harder. And I would call and be like, is he okay? Is he okay? And they're like, yes. Rosaria, he's fine. I'm like, okay. And I would just go about my day and try just to know that I was giving him the best life that I knew how to give for him. And that's not for every parent, and everybody does what they know is best for their child. So, but that was for me what I thought was best. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think people listening, you might be inspiring someone because of the way that you've spoken about what that experience did for him, and now in turn when you're looking back, I'm sure it's easy to say, no, I want to keep you close to me. I want to keep you next to me. I don't know how long we have. I don't know when you're going to get sick next. We have to go to the doctor tomorrow. There's just so many reasons, but thank you for sharing that. And so I know that palliative care, we touched on it a little bit, is something that you're passionate about, just educating people about, because it can be scary to hear that word. But what are some of the things that the palliative care team did for you that you think were beneficial for you and your family?
Well, I'll start off by saying you're absolutely right. I heard the word and I was like, I don't want palliative care, but I happen to have a friend that worked for the agency, and she convinced me that it wasn't hospice. So once I was fully convinced and understood and Googled what it really meant, I signed up, and it was just amazing that the child life specialist would come in, and they have to gear everything towards the age group that they're working with. So she would come in, and they would make necklaces, and they would talk together and just communicate and play games, and it was kind of like, and I could step out of the room again. So it was like a safe space, and she kind of, he was so young to communicate his feelings, but to communicate his happiness, he just radiated. He really did when she was around. And she became almost like a friend to him. And, you know, like I said, child life specialists say, you have to gear it towards the child that you're with. But she worked with him and on communication, but at the same time, it's done through play and just working different, just I could still remember the smiles he had, and I still have some of those necklaces and those beaded bracelets, and as terrible as they look, they mean more to me than like the diamond earrings my husband bought me.
Yeah.
And they're like these wooden, I hope my husband doesn't listen to this, but yeah, wooden, like little wooden balls, and it's a necklace, but the significance and meaning behind it is huge. So Jessica, that's her name, she had a huge impact on his life, and I guess will from ours too forever, because we have these things that he made. But yes, so then the music therapist was huge as well. She would come in and just sing whatever he wanted to sing, and he liked to get loud sometimes. And so she played this. Her name's Emily. Emily would play this gorilla song where you had a point in which you would yell, and he would just like be ready and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then all of a sudden this roar, and he loved it. And just to see the smile on his face, and yeah, so she was amazing. The whole team was amazing. I'll never forget any of them. And towards the end with hospice, when that palliative care turns into hospice, it doesn't have to. So if you're listening, you might graduate from palliative care and never go into hospice. But it went to hospice for us, and so the nurse came in, and she was amazing as well. I have to just say it was one of the most wonderful experiences. We didn't really need the social worker in terms of mental health support. But she was always there for us. And she was always there with the nurse through hospice in case we needed her and her support. So that was great. And in hospice, while he was comatose in bed, Emily would come in and she would still play music for him. And I just remember seeing that and just hoping that he was hearing it. Mm-hmm. So,
did she play any songs that he recognized, or was it just kind of a music like they had done before, or did she follow the mood of the room, or what do you remember about the music she played?
She really, just focused on songs that he liked, nothing that required him to interact with the song, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, and she had to take pauses and breaks as well.
Yeah. And you stayed in the room, to observe and be there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Our whole family was there. Yeah, I'm like totally bawling right now.
Of course.
Yeah, our whole family. That's okay. I don't mind talking about it. I know you guys on the other end are hearing me giggle, but I really am crying. Hold on, just give me a second.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. So, yeah, our whole family was there towards the end. I mean, we had like 10 people over our house. And with the medications, Shaylin, she was the nurse, she would pre-fill them all and have them out timed for when he needed to take them. And so I have epilepsy, and part of that, like, your sleep can't be disturbed. For me, at least. I know there are plenty of one person with epilepsy is one person with epilepsy. So mine, I can't have my sleep disturbed. So I would stay in bed with him the whole time, and then we would swap out other people so that they could give them medication and relieve the other person from sleeping. So I was always there, and we were just so thankful for Shaylin. And it was like 2 a.m. And I mean, we gave her the call that he had passed, and so she comes in, and then they take a pulse for like a minute or 30. I think it's a minute, and then which we called her because he had obviously passed, but I guess to sign the death certificate, you have to have no pulse for a minute or something along those lines. And so she did that, and it just went from there. It was as horrible as anybody could imagine. It really was. It was bad. But I hope if you're listening to this that this isn't terrifying you. I feel badly.
Don't. I mean, you're being so honest and authentic right now, and there's somebody else who needs to hear this. To know
Well,
that
honestly,
they've
I
been
don't
through
think
it
I've
too.
been like this on any podcast so far. Even mine. Oh my gosh, you got me. You got me.
I'm just wondering, what are some of the things you guys do now to memorialize him?
Everything. We just did something. So,
Yeah.
uh, we do a lot. When we had Lucas, we promised ourselves and Lucas that we would never, and he's young, but you know, like a promise to a baby kind of thing, that we would never make him to try to replace Brody, and no one can replace Brody, and we would never try to have him live up to Brody's legacy or anything like that, or compare Brody's legacy to his legacy. That's what I should say, not live up to, but to do any of those things. They're two separate people, and that's how we treat them. And doing that would just be so damaging. So that said, we, in terms of Brody's legacy and for Brody, well, it started right upon his death. We donated the reoccurrent tumor, and so that was donated along with lymph nodes, and we did that because we felt like they had his original tumor, his primary and a secondary. And that's the thing about rhabdomyosarcoma, is that it comes back stronger, and they don't have a lot of the secondary. So we were like, well, down the line, he might save lives. So we do that. And then in his honor, we do a fundraiser once a year. We shoot for the stars and land on the moon. I know it's said reverse, but Lucas reminds me all the time that the moon's closer.
Come on,
Doesn't
Mom.
make sense. so I'm gonna say it Lucas's words. But yes, so, and even his teachers, we gave them a small gift. It's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, so I also believe that it's about the legacy, and he was giving, caring, and he loved his teachers. So his teachers are fantastic. Lucas's teachers are fantastic, and I know that Brody would love that. So in honor of Brody, and in thanks for essentially from him through us, we gave them a small gift. And you know, we memorialize him through just talking about him when we can, because sometimes we get very emotional. I mean, we talk about positive things. I always say that down at the end of the line, or at the end of the road, cancer never wins, because the good memories are the ones that stick. And that is so important to remember. And then that is why it's so important upon a cancer diagnosis that you start making those memories. And cancer will never win if something as tragic as your child passing happens.
My gosh, that's so well put. And you're right. The amount of times that you have smiled during this podcast and I've gotten to see you has outweighed the others. I mean, you speak about him and you have this smile and this look on your face. And that is truly what sticks. And there it is again. And another thing you wrote to me, you said, live life, don't be a passenger. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that's one of the lessons that Brody taught you.
Absolutely. I mean, even when he couldn't have a prosthetic and he refused, he was so short that he couldn't move the wheelchair, but he wouldn't use an assisted walking device. And so he just got around how he got around, and that was on the floor, and he didn't care. And yeah, so he did it. He did everything. He was fearless, and and you're right, I am smiling because he's just awesome. And they talk about him in the present because he and he is present for me. And when I slip into the past, I actually feel kind of guilty because I'm like, no, he's really here for me, to me anyways. So he was just fearless and lived all the time, from the time he woke up to the time he went to sleep. If he was not having a super bad day, he was just never just ready for the next thing, we would take him to a local park and he would just go bananas and have fun. And we would go anywhere, do anything. And he just loved it. And, we did have our downtimes. So, we gave him a couple choices, three choices in a day. Did he want to do something inside or outside? And if you're inside, you have these three options. You're outside, you have these three options. So we let him kind of take the reins on that, but within reason. So he always felt like he had a little bit of control for a kid that had no control. Mm-hmm. And, so it's just zest for life and wanting to do things every day. And he would surprise me too, because I'm like, I think he'll pick this, but this, I don't know, because the other thing is just going to be so complicated and hard. And he'd be like, I want the complicated. Well, he wouldn't say I want the complicated and the hard one, but he would pick that. And I was like, really? Really? Okay. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to you just admire that in an individual, never mind a child. So I really admire that about him. They just had a real zest for life. So just live and don't just be alive and sit there, get out there, enjoy the world. And, that's essentially what that means. And yes, I would say I really got a taste of that from him and how he lived. So.
Well, I can see that in you. I mean, you started a podcast, and that is not an easy feat, I will tell you, as a fellow podcaster. It's a lot of details, a lot of things to go on. And, I ask a lot of families, like, what are resources you would recommend? And I get to say, guess a resource I would recommend is your podcast for sure. But I'm wondering if there's anything else that you can pinpoint that really helped you guys kind of cope now, that you're doing this podcast.
So when I look back, I really have to think about different organizations. They have different missions and how they help. For example, my podcast is support, inform, and promote hope. There were no podcasts that I knew about that did what I did or what you do. So podcasts were not a way or anything that helped me. And I wish I knew what I know now. And I might have some other resources that I didn't have, even a Facebook group, things I would never think of. So that said, we did have a social worker at through palliative care. I did not utilize her, and I regret not doing that because I think when you're going through it, self-care, at least for me, wasn't of the utmost importance. And if someone could have pointed out to me what that looks like, why you need to do it, I think social worker would have been able to do that. But I didn't know that that's something that could have been helpful. I did reach out to a group, but I never went, which is really kind of interesting because I go to the grieving group now. That's the same place that I was going to go to when my son had cancer. So where you would talk to other parents with kids with cancer. So they have been tremendous in terms of coping. But I just wanted to mention them too because they do have a group for parents that have children that are going through cancer as well, or in treatment. Then our extended stay, so Ronald McDonald House was a huge help, as well as Christopher's Haven, which is in Boston, because our treatment was in Boston, Massachusetts. And Christopher's Haven, we stayed there during radiation because we had to be there every day early in the morning. Places that brought him different aspects would be Binkies for Comfort. They supplied him with some very comforting blankets that, a lot of cancer patients, including children, have sensitive skin, and their blankets were exceptional in terms of being very comfortable and thing. Wow. I think, what did he call them? My soft ones. That's what he called them. I want my soft ones, Mama. I want my soft ones. And like, your binky? No, my soft ones. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
I won't tell them that you call them that because he had a lot of them. But yeah, so those blankets really helped him. And like I said, the palliative care, and I think I gave Jessica and Emily and Shaylin shouts out for how awesome they were. Also, our nurse, she was fantastic. Her name's Lisa, and she did just a great job. Shaylin was a nurse too, but Lisa was throughout most of the treatment, and she was fantastic, and she still keeps in touch, which is really kind of nice because you kind of feel like your son is loved outside of the family. And so we'll talk about fun things that he did or funny things that he did. So yeah, I'm reflecting on so much tonight. It's like, this is so hard. Cops for Kids with Cancer helped us out. If you have that in your community, I highly suggest looking into it. Cops for Kids with Cancer gives up to $2,000 to $5,000. I can't remember. It's been so long. When your child's diagnosed, and that's to obviously offset costs for cancer treatment. So I think everybody needs like that one friend or that one person, and let them in and let them help you. So I did that. I felt like it was chancy because I was nervous to let anyone else into my life at that point, and it ended up being one of the most therapeutic things. And I'll never forget that. Oh gosh, I feel like I'm going really slow right now because it's just, my mind is mush. There's so many places that helped. It's just, and I have to give a huge shout out to our doctors. The oncologist was just amazing. We were just so thankful for her. She just made us feel she never made us feel little or small or unknowing. She always gave us like room, I guess, to ask questions and feel comfortable asking questions, and nothing we asked was stupid. So I really felt like her as a team, part, like the team. I mean, her as part of our team. She was like the head of our team, but she was in it for the best interests of him, and also was very accommodating in terms of our lack of knowledge and our knowledge, both sides. And took the time and answered every single question. We had thousands of them. I don't know how she did it, but she did. And so I had to thank her. So then at the Jimmy Fund, there's a social worker, and she's just amazing. She would hand out sports tickets and whatnot for the kids to go to and kind of take their mind off of them. And, he was 3, so the sports games are more like people throwing around balls and like being able to scream and, clap. And that was fun for him. But I mean, he didn't understand like what tickets meant and the rooms that we were in and all that. That didn't matter. But him seeing himself in the big picture up top and whatever that thing is, the jumbo.
The Jumbotron,
yes. Him seeing himself up there, he was like, "Oh, that's so cool." So yeah, he had a lot of good moments, and I'm very thankful that we were at the Jimmy Fund. So I have to thank them too. And there were child life specialists and music therapists and other social workers that were there too. That helped out a lot. I'll stop there because there's so many. Oh, Make-A-Wish. Well, I can't forget them.
Yeah, Make-A-Wish.
They were so accommodating because they, like I had said, I never expected the cancer to return, and it did. And I said, we want to go to Disney in October because he would be that much older. Well, that was around... right when he was no evidence of disease, just wrapped up, and I had the idea that it was going to be 2 years, and I didn't realize it would be 2 months. So yeah, we called them, and they immediately just got us a flight down. And for people that don't know, if you go if you choose Disney, go to this place called Give Kids the World Village, and you stay in a house, essentially, and they have a pool. It's like a resort on steroids because they also have like a corral with horses, and they serve ice cream. I think for over 12 hours a day. You can have a breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They have theme park rides every week. No, every day is a different holiday. So, his favorite was Halloween. While we were there, he got to go around and go trick-or-treating. And then they have a star, you put the name on it and they put it up on the ceiling somewhere. So I have somewhere what galaxy, quote unquote, he's in, and there are so many stars. It's kind of disturbing, but it's beautiful at the same time because you know that you're part of a community, essentially, and you'll always be remembered forever. Even when somebody looks up, they don't know they're necessarily looking at your child star, but there's the memories of those are kids with families that love them, and it's just very meaningful for me to see all these stars and just to know that he's there now. It's just kind of a beautiful thing. And he was so fascinated with it because he loves he was like Lucas is kind of like him. He loved the moon and the stars. So yeah, anyways, that's
yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of cool, like how it's related. And, we started off our conversation talking about Lucas loving the stars, and we didn't know that we'd get here. That's pretty amazing. So Brody, good job. You're talking for your mama. Well, but because I know my listeners will want to listen to your podcast and hear what you have to say and the other guests that you interview, what's the best way for them to follow you and get in touch with you and listen?
Well, you can follow me on Facebook at Scanxiety, which is SCANXIETY. And you can follow me on Twitter. But I'm on Instagram, and that's where I post 90% of my stuff. Website is also www.livingwithscanxiety.org.
Thank you so much for your honesty and your strength, Rosaria. Being able to put into words the emotions that you feel and what you guys have experienced is just a true gift to be able to listen to. Thank you for letting us in. Please rate and review the Child Life On Call podcast so that other parents and listeners will be able to find us. Share with people who don't totally know about the medical world, or maybe are interested in learning about patient experience, or somebody in medical school, or maybe even your kid's pediatrician and you just want them to hear more about what parents go through. Make sure you're sharing this, and you can always connect with me on Facebook and Instagram and ask any questions and give any feedback that you can. And I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Bye. Have a great week.